Hello, everyone, and welcome to our DNA webinar. I'm Jerry Durant, your DNA host for this event. We're pleased to introduce Tasha Wallace and presenter Cameron Duncan from Quadient to present to you today. They are eager to show and tell about the benefits of a Beanworks by Quadient experience. So to start with, all lines are currently muted, but questions are welcome and encouraged, and we'll provide time for that at the end of the presentation. So without further delay, Cameron, you have the floor. Go forward.
Thank you very much. Just go ahead and turn that presenter over to me, and then I can start sharing my screen. And hello, everyone. While we're just getting that sorted, we are going to do a webinar today, ending the paper chase in accounts payable. Now, one second, and I'm just going to pull up my slides. Bear with me, please.
Yeah, I think different. Let's see. Go. Okay, we should be able to see your screen, Cameron.
All right, bear with me, please. Excuse me, everyone. I'm just having a couple technical difficulties here. I can't seem to share my screen. One moment, please.
Yep. Here we go.
All righty. Thank you for your patience, everyone. So today we will be going over ending the paper chase in accounts payable. So hello, everyone. My name is Cameron Duncan, and I will be your host for today. Just a couple fun facts about me. I am based in Vancouver, Canada. Also, I do speak French. So if any of you know any French accountants, feel free to send them my way. So there will be a Q&A at the end. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and then we can address them when we get there. I will be taking you under the hood of our automation software later on in the session and just showing you how we can optimize your AP workflows. So this is the agenda for today. We're just going to discuss the risks and challenges of relying on paper in accounts payable and what you need in order to optimize your financial health. We'll finish with a product demo. Actually, we're going to start with the demo, and then we'll go into the Q&A session. So please feel free to use that Q&A function on your screens at any time before, during the webinar, and then I'll answer those questions at the end. So just getting started with that demonstration. First thing I want to note, this is a website. So after we've done an integration with your ERP, and we can integrate with any ERP there on the market, anyone on your team can access this as long as they have internet. We have 4 modules on the side. We have our invoices, which is really our bread and butter. We also have our purchase orders, our expenses, and our payments. These 3 are all optional to best suit your needs and your workflow. Up here, we have the life cycle of an invoice flows from left to right, starting with the new tab. Down here, this is basically your focalized inbox of all of your invoices that you are bringing in. So whether they're being auto-routed into our system via your AP email, whether you get paper invoices, you can take a photo of those using our app, which will automatically push them into our system, or you can scan them and do a drag and drop into our system. Anyway, they will line up here in the new tab. Once they're in the system, go ahead and open them up, and that's where it will start working its magic. So we will automatically pull a lot of this information on an invoice. We have our invoice number has been coded here. We have a full vendor list being pulled from your ERP, so Cavallo has been linked to that vendor list. The date, payment terms being calculated based on that invoice date, and in return turns into a due date. Automatically coding the description, quantity, unit cost, amount, subtotals, taxes, and totals. And our system will actually get smarter the more you use it. This is where we can teach it new GL codes assigned to new descriptions, and it will actually remember the GL codes from previous descriptions as well. Once all that information has been coded, we're going to submit that for approval, And this is where we will create approval structures based on your company structure. Let's say I'm one of your approvers. Open up the invoice, see what that looks like, double check, make sure everything was coded correctly, approve or reject. If rejecting, you must leave a reason why. That way, the previous person can work on what needs to be corrected and then resubmit that for approval. Creating these approval structures is pretty easy, and we should really sit down with you and make sure that every invoice will get routed exactly how you'd like. We can see in these settings, we have all 4 of our modules up here because approval structures can vary depending on which module. Do you have multiple legal entities? Oftentimes, multiple legal entities need a different set of approval structures as well. So we can select one of your legal entities, and now we see a full list of the approval structures for your company. This one, for example, we have one from 1,000 to 10,000. It's been received to the IT department and from this vendor. If it checks all these boxes, we are then going to route it for a list of these approvers. Now, that's a lot of names. So whether you have 10 employees in your business or 100 employees in your business, we have unlimited users in our system. So everyone can access this tool at no additional fee. To lay down these approval structures, we can have a 4-tiered, or we can even create a group. So rather than send it through 4 approvals one at a time, you can start with Sally, and then Jill, Josh, and Jack will all receive a notification once a day, so we're not spamming you. And the first one to approve that, we'll push that to the next round. Now let's hope everyone here goes on vacation. Vacation is very important. When you go on vacation, make sure that you mark yourself or mark someone as a delegate. So rather than creating those approval structures, it'll automatically be routed to that delegate for the time that you're gone. And let's say that we are system administrators and we want to see who's approving their invoices and who's not approving their invoices. We can now see a full list of these users and how many invoices have been sitting with them for how long. Up here, we do have an itemized dollar amount, so we can see really where those buckets are for forecasting. Once that invoice has been approved, that is where we are going to seamlessly push that invoice into your financial system. Automatically, it's going to appear there as if it was coded by a person. Last tab up here is the archive tab. So I hear stories all day of how people are storing their invoices. We hear things like SharePoint, filing boxes, the storage room downstairs in the basement, all kinds of stories. So no more of that. We're now going to store every invoice within our system for the next 7 years. And up here, you might see some specifications. So this is where we can create filters based on which legal entity we want to see, which org units, that can be based on your company layout, by department, by location, however suits you, and anything else that is on an invoice, such as due date, GL code, or vendor. Here we have a saved filter for ABC Furniture, and we can create now a specialized report for this vendor list. Open that up, create a PDF, and once that has been prepared, we're going to see a breakdown of all of the invoices within that filter, as well as the information that's been pushed into your financial system. Click on the number, and we can now see a copy of what that invoice looks like with the coding details and any approval history. Now we do have 3 other modules here as well, because invoices is really our bread and butter. This is the only one we'll be walking through today. If you do have purchase orders in your workflow, we can definitely work with that. Or if you wanted to automate your payments, we can help automate that, create batches and send out those payments, checks, EFTs, ACHs, or wires for you automatically as well. Or expenses with credit card reconciliation or employee reimbursement, we can help you there as well. So if any one of these areas seems interesting to you, feel free to reach out to myself or our partners here at DNA, and we can arrange a one-on-one personalized demonstration. Now, traditionally, accounts payable has been a paper-heavy process. The use of paper invoices and checks has always been the standard. Even as automation grows in popularity, payments with paper checks still make up 40% of all transactions. The problem is that paper is messy and carries a significant number of liabilities. Not only can physical documents be lost or damaged, but they can also be impossible to access if teams are working remotely. They also leave organizations vulnerable to fraud. Before we take a closer look at the risks of paper, I'd like to take a quick poll to understand how your teams are operating. So on your screen, you're about to see a pop-up. So how much of your AP still relies on paper? So there should be 5 options there. One, either none, 25% or less, 25 to 50%, 50% to 75%, or 75% to 100%. And I will just give a moment for that pop-up to happen, as well as run that poll.
I think we've only got one lit up, Cameron. 75 to 100% still relies on paper.
Wow, okay, a huge percent there. Thank you for that. A huge percent there
Yep.
still relying on paper there. All right, so the simple fact of the matter is that physical documents, they get lost. So the Association for Intelligent Information Management states that 7.5% of documents get lost, and another 3% are misfiled. That means that 1 in 10 documents are either completely inaccessible or will require an extensive amount of time to track down. Just how much time is wasted? According to Economic Times, employees waste as much as 25% of their time hunting down the information needed to do their jobs. If hunting for records isn't time consuming enough, relying on paper invoices, checks, and expense reports also creates tedious data entry. It's boring and frankly error prone. Surveys have found that 76% of office workers spend up to 3 days on data entry. In accounts payable, it's particularly easy for time spent on process to balloon as employees must enter data into multiple systems. The prospect of data entry errors exacerbates the problem. When dealing with paper, it's quite easy for invoices to wind up lost in the approval process. This issue has been complicated by the number of teams working remote or hybrid schedules. This was one of the biggest challenges at Elemental Energy faced. According to controller Tanya, she indicated that approvals went through a mix of information channels based on department needs. Payments over a certain threshold required the CEO's sign-off. Follow-ups were conducted via email, but the process could be laborious if the approver requested backup records. Automation, on the other hand, allows for approvals to immediately route to the right person, creating a digital paper trail, ensuring no documents get lost in the mix. Of course, when you talk about drowning in paper processes, it's impossible to ignore the financial cost as well. A rough way to estimate the cost of manually processing an invoice is consider the cost of 30 minutes of labor from an AP employee. In general, this will range from $12 to $35. The price of manually processing paper checks is equally steep. A single check can cost between $4 and $20, and it is estimated that business in the United States spend $160 billion sending and receiving paper payments. With the nature of the modern workplace changing, reliance on paper has gone from impractical and inconvenient to an impediment, hindering a team's ability to function. With so many organizations continuing to embrace remote and hybrid work, it's important to ask, how has this impacted the accounts payable process? For teams relying on paper processes, employees working remote lack access to their physical files and they need to perform their job. There can also be a lack of visibility due to siloed systems. Without proper integrations, data stored in one system is not accessible from another and may be completely inaccessible to employees working out of the office. Manual processes also create bottlenecks as employees wait for invoices to get signed off. Papers can get lost in the shuffle, buried in an approver's inbox, leaving AP in a state of limbo. Adopting automation helps eliminate both of these concerns. Because data is centralized on the cloud, it can be accessed from any location at any time. A good automation software will also integrate with things like your accounting software, meaning that all of the information you need is readily available. An automation solution also allows you to set up custom approval workflows. Invoices are immediately sent to the appropriate approver, and regular reminders are then issued until the invoice has been signed off, reducing the amount of time that employees are left waiting. The Association for Institutional Research, or AIR, is a great example of an organization that was well prepared for the shift to remote work. They had already started digitizing their processes before the pandemic hit in 2020. AIR's Director of Finance, Charlie, told us we had been preparing for the pandemic without knowing it. Going with Quadient AP automation made things a million times easier. People can send documents around within the system, reject them, and kick them back if needed. It's very manageable for all the small accounting teams that we have. Since that conversation, AIR has completely shifted to being a fully remote organization and just recently closed on the sale of their former office in Tallahassee, Florida. And now we're going to turn our attention to fraud and how reliance on paper-based practices leave you vulnerable to it. Fraud has always been a concern for financial departments, but during times of crisis and uncertainty, it becomes especially difficult. As organizations adopt a new way of operating, scammers are better able to spot weak spots to take advantage of. That's one reason that occupational fraud rose by 90% in the first year of the pandemic. And while the pandemic may not be the crisis it was 2 years ago, economic uncertainty has started to fill the void. People are nervous as a potential recession looms, which makes it as important as ever to have full visibility to your AP process. 71% of finance professionals state that lack of visibility in the AP process left their company vulnerable to fraud. This lack of visibility is tied directly to the increase in remote and hybrid work environments, while still relying on old-fashioned AP processes. We spoke with a business called Hearn Industrial and how automation helped them combat financial fraud. Their financial accountant, Derek, says, "We received an invoice that was completely fraudulent, but it looked like an invoice that we would normally receive. It was uploaded to Quadient AP automation and routed to the approver. They instantly rejected it as a fraudulent invoice." This is a great example of automation providing safeguards against fraud. The software allows you to set up an approval matrix, setting parameters that can require multiple managers to approve invoices over a certain amount. You can also separate duties so that the person who approves an invoice is not the same as the one who distributes the funds. Now, how can you mitigate the risk? So, firstly, we recommend having at least 2 levels of approval. Next, by separating roles for approvers and payments, you reduce the chances for funds to be routed or otherwise misappropriated. Delegation of authority. This applies primarily to determining who should have the authority for specified spending limits within certain categories of expenditure. Security awareness training. Train your team to recognize and handle different types of attack, including BEC, phishing, and spam campaigns. Warn your staff about these scams and give them a central in-house contact where they can verify requests they may receive. And lastly, adopt multi-factor authentication for important processes such as recovering email accounts and wire transfer payments. Many companies are under the impression that their paper-based policies provide strong internal controls. In reality, the increased sophistication of scammers and opportunities for human error make it much more difficult to minimize the risk of loss without the aid of technology. AP automation can greatly improve your risk management capabilities through improved visibility, tracking, and controlled invoice and payment processes. Multiple online approval channels create accountability and allow for verification of vendors and detection of suspicious invoices. It flags duplicate invoices and payments. An automated solution also restricts paying unapproved invoices until the approval process is complete. CFOs have tighter control of who approves invoices and when payments are made, so they can manage risk and financial loss to the company at broader level. All right, so now I'll walk you through how to perform a health check on your accounting practices and the key questions that you should be asking. So we're gonna look at 3 areas: workflows, approval processes, and fraud controls, and the questions you should be asking to assess how strong your accounting practices are and identify potential issues. When assessing your workflows, you should be asking yourself the following questions. How many staff are dedicated to AP functions? What percentage of their day is spent on data entry, processing invoices, payments, expenses management? And how many invoices are processed monthly per full-time employee? How much does it cost to process an invoice? So moving on to the approval process. Research has found that following up on invoices that haven't been approved on time is a lengthy process and can take up to 20% of a typical AP clerk's time. When reviewing the approval processes for your AP workflows, you should ask yourselves, how many full-time employees manage the approval process? How long does it take for approvers to approve an invoice? How much time is spent managing approvals, weekly, monthly, even annually? And this will help you to identify any bottlenecks and areas that you need to improve. And finally, fraud controls. As mentioned earlier, we have seen an increase in fraud since the beginning of the pandemic. Regularly reviewing your fraud controls is essential. And here are a few questions you should ask yourself. Do you run security awareness training for your employees? Do you have a process if vendors wish to change their bank information? How do you stay up to date with best practices? Scammers are becoming increasingly sophisticated, so it's more important than ever that you have a way to stay up to date on the latest scams so you can inform your team and update your controls. And now we'll get into the Q&A. So let me just check out that questions and see if there's something there. All right, so which payment methods are supported? Yeah, so we can pay in pretty much any way that you want. So for our Canadian and our American clients, we can send out checks, ACHs, EFTs, wires, any one of those. And when I say checks, I do mean that we will literally print the check, we will put it in an envelope, and we will mail it up for you. So that whole process will be taken away. What kind of customer support is included? Yep, so our SLA is to always get back to you within 2 business days. For those of you who want some increased support, it's very common for new clients to have an increased support level. We'll get back to you in 2 hours, but that can be modified. So depending on the standard of support that you want, we can get that to make sure there's a response for as quickly as you need. And how long does it take to get set up? Yeah, setup is real quick as well. So for setup, it's basically just 3 meetings. So the first one is an integration meeting. So this is to connect our tool with your financial system. The second one is a workflow call. So that's just setting up any users, restrictions, legal entities, approval channels, user restrictions, anything that is needed in order to get that system functional to process invoices. And then the last one is a training. So you would be sharing your screen with our company trainer, and she would walk you through how to pull an invoice in the system, how to route it for approval, how to create approval channels, and then make sure that gets pushed into your financial system. And I don't see any other questions there. So that is pretty much it for me today. And like I said, my name is Cameron Duncan. You can find out my email and contact me there, or contact our lovely friends over at DNA and to arrange a demonstration with one of our account executives to go through the rest of those modules there, either the payments, the purchase orders, or our expenses module. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the time. Have a good rest of your day.
Super.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much, Cameron. Really appreciate the presentation. Well done.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone for attending. We will say that if you have any questions related to this, reach out to either myself or Mariam, and we'll be happy to help you. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and you get some time back this morning.